In what ways can this year's theme be achieved given the digital divide that we see almost across all the African continent, especially when you look at people in rural settings?
Firstly, I think it's important to note that acknowledging the digital divide is the first step to working towards bridging that divide. And in Africa, we are the most underserved in terms of digital access. There is a framework, the African Union Framework 2020-2030, looking at digital and looking at technology across Africa. And I think it's important for us to build on that framework in different countries to ensure that we implement programs that are inbuilt with equitable approaches for women, for girls, and ensuring that we bridge the divide between the rich and the poor, making access to technology, access to digital tools and services for all in the country. For South Sudan particularly, making sure that that access is created for the youth and for the women across South Sudan.
You know, Sarah, there's so much talk about what we can do because every year there's a new theme. And at the end of the year, we're not so sure how we say this is what was achieved as a result of the theme for the Women International Day of Women. So given your position in South Sudan at the United Nations mission there, you're familiar with all this political upheaval, political instability. Displacement of women and girls is a big problem in that country. How can women in South Sudan get access to technology?
One of the key issues we have is the barriers to access, right? We look at the barriers in terms of the cost of the tools. We look at barriers in terms of energy and access to electricity and access to energy sources for digital technology. We look at also the cost of data, the cost of technology itself. And these are all barriers for the poor, they're barriers for women and for girls. And in terms of ensuring access across the continent, ensuring access across all of the populations we serve, we need to be working in terms of public-private partnership, working with the private sector to establish platforms to support women and link them to economic livelihood activities and to support youth as well. For example, in South Sudan, we have a World Bank funded program with UN Women for economic empowerment for women and girls is also helpful in terms of connecting the youth. The youth are leading the charge in terms of connectivity, in terms of digital access and innovations. And empowering youth, South Sudan is a young woman. I call South Sudan a young lady, 75% youth, 60% women. Young women are the key, empowering young women with access in rural areas, especially to look at using technology for reporting and for monitoring on sexual and gender-based violence, for example, using technology to ensure early warning systems in terms of conflict, in terms of climatic shocks. There's so many ways in which we can empower those in the rural areas with access to technology and use that to actually strengthen our programming.
Sarah, let me take you back quickly to Liberia, where you grew up during the Civil War, and what you are doing to impact women and girls there, very briefly.
Very honestly, being a Liberian woman, it does resonate with me working in South Sudan. The fact that we have all of this potential in terms of the young girls of South Sudan who have been caught up and have, for no fault of their own, been missing in terms of access to health, access to education. And I feel very strongly that if Liberia could come out of a civil crisis and come out to a more stable society right now, not yet out of the woods, but trying to make that turn towards having a development trajectory that will lead to sustainable development. South Sudan can do the same thing. It's our youngest republic. And all of us who have the opportunity to serve the people of South Sudan owe it to the women and girls of South Sudan to make sure that our programs are equitable, to make sure that our programs focus on women and girls, because if you leave 50% of your population behind, you will never have 100% of the gains.
Right. Sarah, thank you so much for your insight.